guys, Michael Furlong here, and I've got Malcolm Sloan with me on behalf of the Real Estate Resource Group. Malcolm, good afternoon. How are you, my friend?
Good, Michael. Excellent. Good to hear.
That's great, man. We were just chatting now. You've got some exciting news. You've just got a new qualification, which we'll talk about in a second. But on behalf of the Real Estate Resource Group, we've really been looking at the Kickstart of 2021, and today, thankfully, we've come out of lockdown, which is really good for Victoria, and it's not so great for New South Wales, and I think other states are in lockdown. But mate, how are things happening? How are things travelling with you and your clients at the moment? I reckon pools aren't probably at the focus of everyone's mind, but they should be.
Yeah, look, this is obviously, well, I'll introduce myself first. Malcolm Sloan from Pool Barrier Services, and I'm a registered building inspector at Pool Safety. Yeah, the deadlines are certainly looming, and a lot of people aren't really taking into account that it's a serious legislation. And obviously with COVID coming in, it's been stop start for a lot of people, and they're in a position that financially it's difficult for them because we really haven't seen one pool barrier yet that would have passed first time around, which means that they've all got to spend some money. And obviously it's something that's not top of mind because you don't want to have to really be in a position where you've got to spend the money. But it's the first group have got to be done by the 1st of November. This year, which is
this year, yeah.
The ones, yeah, they're the ones that were built before 1994, and they're the oldest, and they're the ones that have never ever been inspected. And the problem with that is that there's 80,000 of those in the actual in that grouping. And the way we've said it, there's probably only about 6, maybe 7,000 been done so far. So,
jeez.
Yeah, we've only got a few months to go. And
so Malcolm, you're saying there's 80,000 swimming pools in Victoria?
No, 220,000. So
220,000 swimming pools in Victoria.
Yeah, that's what they know of, and no one really knows how many spas yet because obviously they've never been registered. But so they've split it into 3 groups to the state government to try and make it more orderly. So the first group's the ones that were built before 1994, so they're going to be done by the 1st of November. But then there's 2 more groups after that. There's 80,000 in each of those groups, and the problem is that there's not enough inspectors to actually cover what's facing in front of us. But also the owners, although they've had really 2 years to get it done, they've really left it. And because the perception, I think, is that you just ring up and get an inspector to come out and they give you a certificate and it's all good. But we're finding all of them got problems.
So from a property management point of view, I know that since the new legislation kicked in March this year, smoke alarms, electrical and gas has been the major push.
Yep.
I think maybe the swimming pools has been a little bit forgotten, Malcolm. Do you see that that's where the property management's, it's not at the forefront of their mind, and it should be?
Well, yeah, we are working with a number of major groups, and they are addressing it. But, I'm surprised how many are not being looked at, and obviously for an owner of the business, there's a lot of risk involved, especially when we get to the point of where some haven't registered yet.
So you're talking about the real estate business principle.
Well, the property management.
Yeah,
they really had to make sure that everyone had, any of their clients had registered by the 1st of November last year, and then they're going to make sure it's compliant by the 1st of November this year. And so for them, it's a lot of risk if they don't really address it. But the problem is that it is really the owner's responsibility in the long run.
Sure.
But I'm so sure that they'll certainly look to blame someone else if they do get fined for any particular reasons moving down the track.
You know, it's interesting, Malcolm. I don't know if you know much about the minimum standards that have come in, but they only focus on the electrical, gas and the smoke. Even in the minimum standards questionnaire that's come out from Consumer Affairs, there's no mention of the swimming pools, which is a little bit strange, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's under the Building Act. So that's got to be enforced by council and state government. So really and that's what I was getting back to. It's really the owner's responsibility. So it's not really, but the property manager can easily get caught up in the middle if it's not acted on correctly.
And so what? So that's the biggest issue that you're seeing at the moment. Is there going to be a push for inspections late, and there won't be enough inspectors? What's the biggest challenge that that your clients have been facing with around the swimming pools inspections? Really,
the non-compliance issue is the main part of it.
Okay.
The problem that you got is if the inspector comes out and you do it without a pre-compliance, and the inspector comes out and it fails, the property manager only gets 60 days to get it rectified.
Okay.
And that's part of the state government. And then after that, it can be passed off to the council to then deal with, which is what you've got to avoid. And that's why we offer two services, either a pre-compliance, which means we come out and do a 12-page report, help the property manager, and really liaise with the owner, not the property manager. You've really got to pass all the responsibility back to the owner.
Sure.
And then once it's prepared and ready, then the guarantee is that once the inspectors come through, which is like myself and my team who are licensed, then the pre-compliance side of it guarantees that if it fails, well, then they'll pay for the inspection to be redone, not by the owner.
So what should property managers be doing now to try and cover themselves and their owners?
They've got to go through their portfolio and work out exactly all the properties that have got pools, and they've got to contact, especially ourselves, to get a pre-compliance done. And then from there we can get that all done. The first lot, well, really, they've got to look at all of them to try and get them done as soon as possible. Although some might not have to be done for 2 years or a year and a half. The problem you've got is that if something does go wrong, you haven't acted on it, you could be liable. So you're best to cover them all, doesn't matter what age group that they come in, and get them all compliant as quickly as possible.
It's interesting, Malcolm. I spent a fair bit of time inside of agencies and I asked the question, how many swimming pools? And they say, oh, I think we've got 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. I'm not really sure. So I think one of the very first things they need to do is actually understand how to tag inside a Property Me or Property Tree or Console to customize those properties that do have swimming pools. Because if you don't even know how many properties you've got with pools, it's hard to actually understand the compliance.
Absolutely, without doubt. And they've got to be really careful that they won't know that the spas are there in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And the spas are the ones that are hidden, and because they've never been registered before or never been had a permit, the council don't even know they're there. And then the problem is if it goes past the deadline, you're either going to have to remove it very quickly, or you've got to then face fines, because if you don't get it registered and compliant by the 1st of November, the first group, it's $1,650 fine. So
okay, we don't want any of that. Malcolm, how do people get in touch with you if they need to? Your website is?
poolbarrierservices.com.au, or contact me on 0417 344 074.
Fantastic. Mate, thank you very much. And I look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Thank you very much, Michael. Really appreciate it.